Very few of us here today were alive when the Battle of Britain raged across southern England 69 years ago. Even fewer actually witnessed the battle. Yet I'm sure that many, like me, feel as if they were present. As we gather here towards the end of another Canadian summer, the images are crisp and clear in our minds. The swirling white contrails above St. Paul's Cathedral in London, the exhausted fighter pilots in crumpled blue uniforms and yellow life jackets, asleep next to their Spitfires, in wicker chairs with loyal Labradors and Spaniels at their feet. The dogfights rolling across the sparkling English Channel, with the white cliffs of Dover serene in the background. The famous speech before Agincourt in Shakespeare's Henry V almost prefigured what has indeed happened since the Battle of Britain. This story shall the good man teach his son, and Crispin shall ne'er go by from this day to the ending of the world, but we in it shall be remembered. We few, we happy few, we band of brothers. We can picture it all so clearly, partly because it has been endlessly memorialized in song and story, film and comic strip, but also because there have been few conflicts in history with such clear limits in both time and geography. It is not a muddled story, like so much history, but a distinct episode that shines out clearly down the years. The point when the tide of events which had moved inexorably against the Allies for month after bitter month finally turned in our favor. From this moment, and from our vantage point in 2009, the chain of subsequent developments in North Africa, the Pacific, Russia, and eventually Normandy seemed almost to have been preordained. Of course, that grand sweep wasn't at all clear to the young men and women of Fighter Command in 1940, nor to the wider nation, nor to the Commonwealth of Nations. Nor was it clear to the Germans, who were flush with confidence from victory after victory across Europe that summer. Avec la défaite des Français, entraînant pour conséquence de mettre leur importante industrie de l'armement au service de l'ennemi, tout comme les véhicules britanniques qui furent abandonnés en France, sans oublier les lignes de défense anglaises démoralisées, désorganisées et mal préparées, le risque imminent d'invasion par les forces qui s'assemblaient dans tous les ports des pays occupés d'Europe, avec les États-Unis faisant toujours bande à part. Il aurait sans doute été très tentant de perdre d'espoir. Oui, nous avions toujours la Royal Navy qui nous a si bien servi à travers l'histoire, mais la flotte était principalement amarrée dans le nord d'Écosse, incapable de protéger la côte anglaise de la conquérante Luftwaffe. But history is full of turning points at which human spirit dictates an outcome against all logic and against all reason. After many months of bad news and political vacillation, the British people and their allies around the Commonwealth were inspired by the arrival, only a few weeks before the Battle of Britain, of the pugnacious and stubborn Winston Churchill, who put new heart into them. He seemed to turn the tide almost by force of will. And the squadrons of Fighter Command were filled with young men, often very young men, who ignored the odds and took up the fight with enthusiasm and fantastic bravery. We can thank God that they prevailed. They were an unlikely, disparate bunch, from all walks of life and from across the world. 2,000 Canadians served with the RAF at that time, including 103 of the 2,900 pilots who fought in the battle. Unlike later in the war, when the Royal Canadian Air Force had its own squadrons and bases, at that time individuals were scattered across almost all of the British units, where they would have met, fought and died alongside new friends from Australia, South Africa, Poland and many other nations represented here today, including, I may say, some American pilots who refused to remain neutral in 1940. Il y eut de très nombreux exemples de bravoure et de sacrifice durant la Deuxième Guerre mondiale, à l'instar des jeunes hommes et femmes des forces armées canadiennes et britanniques qui continuent de donner leur vie aujourd'hui en Afghanistan et dans d'autres zones de conflit. Les pilotes de bombardiers ont aussi fait preuve d'héroïsme et ont dû faire face à des pertes immenses, tout comme bon nombre d'autres bataillons militaires. There were many examples of bravery, and sacrifice in the Second World War, just as young men and women of the Canadian and British forces continue to give their lives today in Afghanistan and other theatres of war. The bomber pilots too fought with heroism and endured horrendous losses, and so did many others of all services. So there were those who harboured some resentment after the war about the relentless focus on the Battle of Britain and the fighter pilots. But when we remember the debt that we owe to those brave young airmen, their supporting ground crews, and others who made the historic victory possible, they are also representing something bigger than themselves. They stand proxy for all those who fought so bravely for our freedom. And they stand proxy for a lost time, a lost innocence even. We can see in our mind's eye those dogfights in clear blue skies, and they touch us on a human scale. We can understand them. They harken back indeed to medieval dueling and hand-to-hand combat. It was a time when we stood together as a nation and as a commonwealth of free nations. There was an unparalleled sense of community, born partly of fear, but representing too moral certainty in the rightness of our cause. It is a sense of community and a sense of certainty that we struggle to find again in modern times. And that, I think, is the real reason why the Battle of Britain continues to resonate so strongly in all our hearts.